America's Voice Live, America's fastest growing news program. With Steve Gruber.
We've got to put America first. You do that by voting and bringing your friends to do the same.
Delivering the latest news, observations, and opinions. With the entire Real America's Voice team, America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gruber. Today is Thursday, July 27th. Let's get to the day's top stories, and thank you for being here. We've all heard the phrase, of course, drain the swamp, but how exactly does that happen, and where do we start? Because it hasn't happened yet. Ex-FBI agent and whistleblower Steve Friend has an idea. He'll join me to tell me about it. Coming up later. Also, congressional hearing witnesses are saying that executive branches have withheld information from Congress about unidentified flying objects, well, for decades. Somehow that seems more believable than actual UFOs. We'll see how that plays out. Then later, censorship is a real problem in the United States. Most Democrats want more of it, and most Republicans are attempting to rein it in. Nurse Erin Olszewski. She'll join me to discuss it. But first, let's talk about the latest concerning Hunter Biden. That's where we start today. What was supposed to be a consummation of a sweetheart deal for Hunter Biden to get away with not paying taxes on millions and millions of dollars of illicit income and deep-sixing a felony gun charge, too, turned into a potential nightmare for Hunter and, more importantly, for President Joe Biden and the entire Biden family. Simply because more and more evidence appears to show the Biden family has profited greatly by selling the family name to the highest bidder and selling America down the road. David Weiss is the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, who has come under a lot of scrutiny lately after announcing that after 5 years of allegedly investigating Hunter, the best he could do was a couple of misdemeanors for tax evasion on more than $2.2 million of unpaid taxes, plus a diversion program for a 10-year felony for lying on the FBI firearm background check. When Hunter said he didn't use illegal drugs and bought the gun during a time when he was addicted to crack, hookers, and apparently underage girls too, that, according to the evidence found in his infamous laptop and a book he wrote about the time in his life that happened. But a funny thing happened on the way to the sweetheart plea deal. Justice showed up and shot the whole thing down. U.S. District Judge Mary Ellen Noriega started asking questions of both the prosecutors and the defense, and that's when the biggest cherry on top ever came tumbling out for all to see. It was blanket immunity. You see, the judge asked the prosecutors if more charges were possible in the case, and they said yes, reluctantly. Then she asked if the investigation was still ongoing, and again, David Weiss and company said yes, they had to, because they've been repeatedly told, telling Congress, that is, that they could not share anything about Hunter Biden or the Biden family because it was an ongoing investigation. So then what were they supposed to say? The only thing they could. At that point, the defense attorneys freaked out, including the Sugar Brother lawyer for Hunter, Kevin Morris, the same lawyer pictured doing bong hits just a couple of days ago in his L.A. balcony. Anyway, he chimed in, said he didn't agree with all of that. So one of the other lead prosecutors said there was no deal on the table then. So believe it or not, when everyone walked into the courtroom yesterday, Hunter Biden and his team actually thought not only were they getting the deal of the century and something not available to the general public like you or I for felony tax evasion and felony gun possession, but they were walking out with blanket immunity on anything that anyone finds going forward. What they got instead was a cold shot of reality because the judge said, yeah, that's not going to happen. Then she tipped her cards even more. She asked Hunter if he knew he'd evaded paying taxes, millions of dollars in taxes. And he said yes. And then she asked the prosecution if Hunter violating FARA laws was on the table. And they said it was. FARA laws require somebody working for a foreign company or a country in such a capacity to register as a foreign agent, which Hunter never did, of course, even though we now know through whistleblowers from the IRS that he earned at least $17.3 million from such endeavors, and many believe that number is going to be much higher. And over on NBC, the little news hack, Chuck Todd had to admit the whole mess in Hunter Biden's case may have opened up the whole family, including the president, to a lot more scrutiny. Listen to this.
The Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in this case, David Weiss, is facing elevated scrutiny of his own due to the handling of this investigation after House Republicans heard public testimony from a pair of IRS whistleblowers alleging political interference in this investigation. That testimony came after the original plea deal was announced, which today dramatically fell apart. And it is worth noting that the House Ways and Means committee, led by Jason Smith, the Republican of Missouri, did give additional information to the judge in Delaware before today's proceeding.
So does this finally put the Biden family in the crosshairs? Hunter now faces the possibility of real jail time and a trial, of course, if it does go. Discovery will be interesting, and it might prove once and for all that President Biden should be impeached. Here to discuss all of that, Congressman from South Carolina, Ralph Norman. Congressman, I'm hearing the impeachment arguments getting pulled together. Where are you on the question of impeachment today after all you've heard and everything you saw yesterday? Where do you stand today?
First of all, Steve, the house of cards for the Biden family is coming down. A family that's been protected that, like no other American, would be protected by supposedly the gold standard with the FBI, the IRS. And, you let the facts determine where we go. None of this would be possible had it not been for the Republicans taking over in January and holding meaningful hearings, which hadn't been done for the last 4 to 7 years on the Democrats. So, wherever the facts lead, but it's looking like impeachment will be on the table, which I think it is. And the American people are asking for, not just trials and hearings. Where are the consequences? We all saw Hillary Clinton get off. And now with the facts being where they are, with the witnesses being credible, IRS agents with years of experience, FBI agents, these aren't, some random person drug off the street, like was the case with the Supreme Court hearings with Kavanaugh. But I think it is looking more and more like impeachment, and I think it's warranted, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Look, I think we were all surprised, Congressman, yesterday. It was supposed to be a 30-minute coronation or consummation or whatever you want to call it. It was the deal of the century, a couple of misdemeanors for not paying $2.2 million in taxes, and the argument, well, he paid it back. Doesn't matter. That does not apply in federal law. When you don't pay your taxes, you pay a stiff price. And the 10-year felony on buying a gun when you're under the influence of crack and whatever else, and he knew and he lied on the background check. I mean, that's an automatic felony. You can't get away with that. So were you as surprised as we were when it all went sideways and the judge said, wait a second? Because what they did, it looks like to me, is they had their plea agreement up front. But in the diversion program part, the second part of the whole deal, that's where they hid the deal about immunity. Blanket immunity for Hunter Biden hidden in the back pages. She smelled a rat. And I'm glad she did, but I was pretty surprised. What was your reaction yesterday? I
was surprised the judge ruled the way she did. Norika did the right thing. And the American people are not dumb. They understand when a sweetheart deal is done. This hadn't just begun with Hunter Biden. He didn't just steal a bag of candy from a grocery store. This dates back to 2015 and 16. Look at the suspicious activity reports issued by the Treasury, which is a serious offense, over 150. Look at the art sales where he's gotten millions of dollars. Look at the Burisma dollars that he got. This just smells of corruption, and I think it is. And the fact that they are now delving into it and more information is coming out, I think they're getting what they deserve, and I think you will ultimately see a impeachment hearing, and rightfully so. On the 25th Amendment alone, Steve, the man's not all there mentally and leading the free world.
He's not. He's not. And I'm going to get back to that in a second because it's an important question I want to ask you on that regard. But as you look at all of the statements made by Joe Biden, I never had any knowledge, basically, of Hunter's business dealings. We know that coming up Monday, Devin Archer is going to testify, and we believe that the New York Post and others are accurate in reporting that Devin Archer is going to testify under oath, behind closed doors, but under oath, that not only did Joe Biden get involved and know about what was going on, he was included in at least 24 phone calls where he was on speakerphone because Hunter Biden used him as a parlor trick. Hey, look, party trick. There's my dad. You're going to pay us millions of dollars, or we're going to come down on you, or we're not going to help you out, or whatever it was, the leverage they used. But Joe Biden was the linchpin of the leverage, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, and he's on tape. I mean, this isn't something that they can fake, or it's not just words. The other thing that's interesting, look at what Joe Biden is saying now. He's saying that he never was actually in the deal with Hunter, instead of, I've never had conversations with my son about any business dealings, which, we've got pictures of him playing golf. I mean, it never made sense in the first place. Joe Biden has been lying from day one. He's a corrupted politician that's been in office way too long, and American people don't deserve this. They do deserve to see consequences, though.
Yeah, has he put us? I mean, here's the real question, because it's not just Ukraine and Burisma. It's CEFC over in China. A whole bunch of payments coming out of Romania. I don't know what those are for. And payments from Russia, the former wife of the mayor of Moscow, one of those sending a couple $1 million over to Hunter for who knows what, right? I mean, all of these things and all of these countries that are not friendly to the United States, this requires a real sober look at what has actually happened, what was paid for, what was bought and paid for, what did those people get in return for those huge sums of money, which, by the way, James Comer said could be close to $100 million in the things that they're seeing. Not 17.3, not 25, not 50, maybe $100 million, Congressman. This is a huge sum of money.
It is, and even Hunter on interviews years ago mentioned had he not had the last name Biden, if it was Smith, he'd never gotten by with this. He'd never gotten the money. And the press, mainstream press, has never had a curiosity on this, which is interesting. But no, I think once the facts are uncovered, once American people see that it's involved, the extent of what this president has compromised our national security is incomprehensible, and we shouldn't have to put up with this. And I think it's rightfully so. I think the man should be impeached, as well as a lot of other people he's put in his administration that are completely incompetent and are selling America out.
Well, it's going to be awfully hard for a lot of those people that were, quote, riding with Biden to separate themselves now, aren't they? There's going to be a big problem heading into the 2024 election, riding right over the cliff. But I want to ask you about something you mentioned there just a moment ago, and that is his aides, the 25th Amendment. There was an event yesterday on Capitol Hill. Mitch McConnell froze in front of the cameras, had some sort of an event occur. We've all seen the tape. We've seen Dianne Feinstein recently. We've seen Nancy Pelosi mix up, Ted Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy. She has no idea. And people are talking about, should there be an age limit? All of these people are 80 and above. And they don't seem like they're quite on top of it anymore. What do you say about that when people say there should be an age limit to serve in the United States government?
Well, not only should be an age limit, but when you have the front and center stage, a leader of the free world who can't read a thank you note without a teleprompter, when you have a man that cannot give a press conference, who cannot do an interview like you and I are having and ask him to recite anything, it's dangerous. And our national security is at stake. And so, yes, I think he ought to voluntarily do a cognitive test, which Ronnie Jackson from Texas has called for. But at some point, his family has got to realize, if they really love the man, to get out of office and go home and do whatever he wants to do on his free time. But it sure isn't serving the interests of the American people.
No, it doesn't seem to be, no. And I guess there are exceptions to the rule of age, because you've got Chuck Grassley, who has all of his faculties, and he's, 88? So, it depends for me. I don't have a clear and dry answer for that. But, Congressman, these are important questions. We're all going to be watching Monday, that's for sure, when Devin Archer is on Capitol Hill. What will that expose? And the Democrats have a real problem, because their next in line is less popular than Joe, because Kamala Harris is the most unpopular politician in my lifetime. I'll give you the last word.
Kamala Harris is to be honest with you, a buffoon. What subject can she talk on intelligently? She can giggle okay, but that's not what it takes to be the leader of the free world. So, and that's been one of the things that's held up the impeachment. Look at who you get. But at some point, the consequences have to be enforced, and I think this is one of them, and we'll see what happens with her.
All right. Greatly appreciate it. Always. We'll be watching all the developments, and it's getting serious. I think that Congress should not take an August break and look at the seriousness of what we're dealing with, but I don't think that you set the calendar, nor do I, so we'll live with what we have. Congressman Ralph Norman, as always, my friend, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Steve.
There you have it. All right, coming up after the break. Okay, maybe the swamp isn't drained yet, but at least the sludge has gotten a bit lower, and we can start seeing the creatures lurking down there. How do we really drain the swamp? Well, former FBI agent Steve Friend will join me with a couple of good ideas on where to get started. That's up next on Voice Live.